Sibusisiwe Chindove, welcome to In Conversation with Trevor.
Thank you, Trevor.
I'm delighted,
Happy to be here.
I'm delighted that we're finally doing this because your story is a story I think that's going to be empowering and inspiring to quite a lot of people. Reading around you as I was researching, I was taken back to the good old days, our good old days. So we'll walk through those good old days. But let me start, Busi, with you at 16 years old.
Wow, that's a long way back, Trevor. Yeah.
At 16 years old, you became a presenter whilst you were a radio presenter, whilst you were still a student. How did this happen?
Yeah, as I said, it's going back some time. What happened, Trevor, is my mother was a very social person and she had a huge network. And she made friends with a broadcaster whom you may remember called Jill Baker. So what happened is when we finished our O-levels, you know, there's that gap of about 3-4 months where you've got nothing to do and you drive the parents crazy and all that. So my mom then approached Jill Baker and said, look, she needs something to do over the next 3-4 months, you know, is there any opening? And Jill Baker at that stage was a co-owner of a company called Blackberry Productions. And Jill put us in the library. A friend of mine, Emily Samasuo, and I, we went to work at Blackberry Productions and we worked in the library, and our role was to record or note down every single record, and I don't know how many people still know what a record is, but it was a vinyl record, and we had to catalog these, you know, the most boring job ever. But it kept us busy, and what it also did is it allowed us to meet and work with some of the biggest names in radio at that time. So we were working with Ray Chirisa, we were working with John Matinde, you know, we were working with Mike Mundwa, and a whole lot of other people. So James Makamba. So it was a great place to work.
So Mom opened the door for you.
Mom opened the door
through her networks.
Yes.
Isn't that amazing? the role that moms and parents do have to open those kind of opportunities.
Yeah.
Tell me, Busi, how the impact of that opportunity, that door opened, what effect has it had on your life up to this day?
Well, Trevor, from working in that library, there was an afternoon where they needed to record a radio commercial, and they couldn't find a voice. So they walked into the library and they said, "Oi, you two, come to the studio." And I mean, we had no place in the studio, you know, and I went in there and Emily went in there and they did a voice test. They gave us the script and then, you know, we did that commercial. And that's how I started broadcasting.
When did you actually officially get a gig as a broadcaster?
It was about a month down the line because I went through training. Jill Baker spent hours and hours and hours with me in the studio. I didn't have the confidence that I could do this. I mean, I must be honest. But she thought she saw something, you know, and she was willing to spend the hours. So between 5 and 7 every day for about a month, we just went through the routines and she gave me scripts and, you know, we tried all sorts of scripts and different scenarios until she said to me, "Look, I think you're ready." So at that stage, there was a radio station called Radio Jacaranda. It was the predecessor to Radio 3. So that's when she said to me, "Are you happy to do an hour?"
Radio Jacaranda, remind us, was mostly white audience, am I right?
That's correct.
Right. Okay.
Yes, but they wanted to transition it so that it could have a more inclusive audience. You know, she then said to me, "Would you mind doing a Friday night slot for an hour?" And that's how it all started.
And you enjoyed it?
I loved it.
What did you like?
I loved it because I had the freedom to choose. It was a music show, and I had the freedom to choose the music that I wanted. with guidance, obviously. And I just loved the fact that it was connecting with people, you know? Even though you're in a studio, you're on your own, but you could feel that connection. And at that stage, they were beginning to have the phone-in programs and so on. So you could tell whether you were connecting with an audience or not. Yeah.
Meanwhile, you're continuing with your studies.
With my studies, yes.
Right?
So I actually used to go to the studio dressed in my school uniform.
What school was that?
I was at the Dominican Convent High, in
So you
4th
leave
Street.
Dominican Convent into the studio and
Yes.
talk to Zimbabwe.
Yes, that's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And what made you then went to the University of Zimbabwe, Busi, and
I
decided to do a Bachelor of Administration honors. Why did you go for Bachelor of Administration? I tell you why I ask. Because when I applied to the University of Zimbabwe, I wanted to do law. I missed law by 1 point, and I could have killed myself because that's how disappointed I was by the fact that I hadn't chosen law. Why was I choosing law? Because there were some role models that I was seeing out there that had done law, and I'd say, I want to be like that
Exactly,
person.
yeah.
Why did you choose Bachelor of Administration?
Well, my story is not as noble as yours. I mean, if I'm going to be honest here, my story was not that noble. What happened is I actually went to the university under instruction from my mother to go and apply to do law. So I got there, and what they'd done is they had different tables with the different faculties. So I arrived and started asking which table is the faculty of law. And then I just looked at the size of the queues, and the law queue was very short. So I went to the person who was at the back of the queue, and I said to them, "Why is your queue so short?"
Yeah.
And somebody from another queue said to me, "Don't, these guys have got no life. They just spend their whole life reading. There's no life." So I thought, I didn't come to university to have no life. So I started walking and asking at the various queues, what is this queue for? Business studies. What's business studies? They explained to me, is there maths in there? Yes. No, I don't want to do anything with maths in it. So finally I got to this queue, which was very, very long. And I said, why does everybody want to do this degree? And they said, it offers you the greatest flexibility. So I said, really? So I looked at the courses and I thought, oh, okay, some of them resonated with me. So during that degree program, Trevor, I was able to do marketing for 3 years.
Wow.
I was able to do psychology for 3 years. I was able to do sociology for 3 years. And then we had the subjects where we really had no option, like political science, public administration, and so on. But I enjoyed, my studies in marketing. I loved the psychology and so on. And those people were right. That degree program actually gave you the greatest flexibility.
And it's a degree program, I think, to a large extent that you have leaned on to get where you are right now.
When I reflect, so often we're told to trust in God, and we try and maneuver life the way we want it. But when I reflect on how my life has panned out, it really just tells
God
me
was
that I
ordering
should
your
trust.
steps.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because
After mom instructed you to go and
she
enroll.
wasn't very happy when I got there and I said, I'm doing a Bachelor of Administration, and she said, what?
But you had made your choice.
Yeah, I'd made the choice.
What role did your mom play? I mean, we're 5 minutes into the interview right now, and mom has figured twice already. She looms larger than life in your life.
Very much so, Trevor. I was blessed to have her as my mom. She was a fantastic role model. She was, a lot of the things that I've learned that are important in life, things like humility, things like generosity, just being able to love people for who they are without condition. That's just the person she was. And, huge in terms of a huge shoulder to cry on and so on. my parents were divorced, Trevor, when I was 18 months old.
Oh.
Yeah. So perhaps also that explains why, she played a huge role in my life, because she was the mother, she was the father, but a wonderful woman. And when I also look at the way my life has panned out, there are a lot of things which maybe she didn't overtly guide me into that direction. But for instance, she was a journalist, and she worked for the African Daily with people like William Sarurwa and so on at that time. And therefore, when I started going into broadcasting, she was very supportive, because it was a journey that she had walked, in a different way. She was in the newsroom, she was a reporter and that kind of thing. But she was able to relate to it, and she didn't stop me because, as I said, she could identify with it. Yeah.
And then you get into broadcasting yourself, and you do this, like we said, whilst you are studying. For me, as I was reflecting on inviting you here, I was saying to myself, it's important for young people to realize that Busi is an icon, that she started in radio at 16 years, and she grew in the job, and she's become a big corporate executive. So these journeys are long. When you look back at that, I mean, when I said 16 years old, when you look at that, I
couldn't even remember being 16.
when you look at that and where your journey is taken through right now, what goes through your mind, Busi?
As I said, Trevor, now that I'm at this stage in my life, I'm able to reflect and just realize that your life is defined for you. The decisions that you are led to make are decisions that then impact you throughout your life. The foundation, whether it's in terms of education, whether it's the experiences that you go through, they all add up and morph to define who you are. But I'm also just very grateful that I've, throughout my life, met people who were willing to spend time with me. I'll say to invest, because they were people whom I reflect and think about the way in which they gave me guidance, they gave me advice. And I think for young people, it's really important for them to realize that open yourself up to that. Allow people who even bother about you to give you that advice, to give you that guidance, and you learned so much. For me, as I said, my mom played a big role. My grandmother also played a huge role, because while I was born in Harare, at a very early age, when I was about maybe 2 years old, my mother got a scholarship to go and study at university in Canada, and she left me with my grandmother in Mondoro. In Mondorongezi. So I spent my early childhood, with my grandmother in Mondoro. And, another great woman, a woman of faith and a strong, very strong character, an entrepreneur. So again, I was blessed to learn so much from her that helped me in my life going forward.
They say you can tell somebody was raised by a grandmother. They are firm, there are lots of humility, lots of values. I see that in you, Busi.
Look, my grandmother was a very, very humble person, extremely humble. But she was also a disciplinarian.
Oh,
yeah, no nonsense.
Strong hand.
No nonsense at all, because there were a lot of us. I mean, I think we were about 12 of us, all her grandchildren. And she was a lady who unfortunately had very significant health issues. She was asthmatic, she had a heart condition, and therefore she had to have these 12 kids controlled. Otherwise it would have been chaos. But when we reflect and we laugh about this journey that we walked with her, a lot of us are what we are in life because of the discipline that she gave us, and you know, those values of caring for other people, respecting other people, and so on.
So grandmothers, you know, instill in us those values. I was also raised by
Your
a
grandmother, yes.
firm hand,
Okay.
disciplinarian.
Yeah.
But I like what you said about saying to young people, be open to learning. You know, somebody said to me, it's having a teachable spirit all the time. Go out into the world every day with a teachable spirit. Open yourself to learning.
Yeah.
Open yourself to elders, your generation, being able to deposit into you. And my sense is that Generation X, or whatever it's called, doesn't do much of that. Do you agree with me?
I do, Trevor. That's why, you know, I made that comment, that I think perhaps it was instilled in us, you know, for people of our generation, that you can learn something from adults. But I think Generation X, it's kind of thinks adults are dumb.
Ouch. True, I agree with you.
I think they do. Some of them anyway. Let's not paint everybody
Sure,
with the same
sure.
brush, because it's unfair. But some of them do. And I think, you know, this is just something that would like to remind them that, you know, these people have walked that journey.
Be humble.
And sometimes, with humility, you can learn something.
Yeah. Busi, you were one of the founders of Radio 3, which was the thing, or the radio station when some of us grew up, with the likes of John Matinde, Josh Makawa, Hilton Mambo, Peter Jones.
Yes.
And I keep on saying, you know, for us, these were the good old days. And you stayed with ZBC. You became a producer. You became a presenter. And for 10 years, you were the face of ZTV main news. What was that like?
You know, it was a job, but one that I absolutely loved, you know. And one of the things that it did was also give me flexibility in terms of time, because I worked specific but short hours. And it gave me an opportunity during that time to spend a lot of time with my children, which I think a lot of working mums don't have that opportunity. So it's something that I really appreciated. But going back to the work, you know, I was brought up, as you said, you know, with a mother who was very humble, a grandmother who was humble, who instilled that humility in us. So I always, to be honest, I found it awkward sometimes, you know, when people recognized me and, you know, you become almost like part of their families, part of their home. And I always, you know, narrate to people that sometimes people would recognize you from the screen, but because they see you in a supermarket or in a pharmacy, they can't quite place where they've seen you before. And the most common comment that I used to get was, did we go to school together?
Where do I know you from?
Where do I know you from? And then because, you know, I would find it awkward to say, oh, I'm so-and-so, you know, I'd just say, you know, and brush it off and walk off. But that was the thing that you needed to get used to, you know, being a household face, being recognizable, and people actually feeling that you are part of their lives.
Yeah.
Yes. And, you know, my kids always, you know, they're getting used to it now, but from then until now, I'm Busi, you know. It doesn't matter how young a person is or what their age, I'm just Busi. And you feel good in that perhaps it's a reflection that people can relate to you and with you and feel that you've integrated yourself into their lives somehow. Yeah.
So for us in my family and our friends in Magwegwe, Sounds on Saturday was the highlight of our lives. And those that didn't have television would go to the neighbors to go and watch. And you and John Matinde, am I right?
Yes.
Presented Sounds on Saturday for a very long time, which made you an icon, a household name, a role model. Talk to me about dealing with being famous, being popular.
Again, you know, it was something that I found difficult to deal with because I didn't come from a family where attention was something that you sought or you looked for. But I realized obviously that it came with the territory, but it was something that I struggled with, if I'm very honest. And
why, Busi? Why did you struggle?
Because I think I'm generally a very private person. Yeah. I'm generally a very private person.
A shy person?
Yeah, and it's an oxymoron because you're a private person, but you've accepted to do a job that's not private, That's a tension.
So yes, tension. Talk to me about that
so it was I really needed to get used to that, and it took me some time, but in the end, you realize that it goes with the territory. And the pressures that came out of it. The most negative thing that I had to deal with, Trevor, was the rumor mongering. Oh, yeah. People just made up these crazy stories about you.
Aren't you happy? This was before Twitter and Facebook.
I'm very happy. I'm very happy because I don't know how I'd have coped with it. But that rumor mongering, some of it, for want of another word, maybe not serious, kind of silly, but some of it really damaging to your character and your personality and hurtful, And I would say that, at the end of the day, when I made the decision to leave broadcasting, it was one of the factors.
Wow.
Yeah, it was one of the factors. My children were growing up, and I didn't want my children exposed to negative, untrue rumors, because I also imagined the damage that it could do to them, So it was one of the factors. The other actually was not even related to that, but is related to your question, Trevor. And that the main reason why I left is there was somebody who pitched up at the radio station one day and asked to see me. And I had a gut feel as I walked to the reception that something was horribly wrong. And as I walked towards him, he opened his jacket and took something out. And my instinct just said, run.
Wow.
So I did run, and I ran back to the studio. And normally what happens is studio doors are security doors. And I knew I was safe behind there, and I was safe. And then, the security guys took care of it and so on. But this guy had come to actually attack me. And his reason was that I was causing him psychological problems because he wanted to relate with me, but I wasn't accessible. And it was causing him all sorts of, I suppose, psychological issues.
Mental issues.
Yeah. So that's when I had to ask myself the question, you've got 2 children. Is this really what you should be doing? Should you not actually be taking yourself out of the public eye and focus on being a mother and focus on just being a career person, but without being out there?
That must have been traumatic.
It was very, very traumatic, Trevor.
It was one of the worst.
It was extremely traumatic. And the sad thing is, he didn't do this just to me. He did it as well to another presenter. I won't name her because I don't have a mandate to name her. But he actually then physically attacked her. So for me, the decision I felt was correct and for the right reasons. But you asked the question, what the baggage that comes with it.
Absolutely.
Introducing the self-service portal. Nyaradzo has launched its very own self-service portal. This platform is available to Nyaradzo clients via the Nyaradzo Group website. Now you have your policy information readily available for your convenience. The self-care platform enables you to view your policy details, lives assured, policy plan type, and contact details. Edit your information, email, residential address, phone number, view your payment history, and outstanding balance. You are now able to make payments using mobile money platforms, EcoCash, and One Money. You can get updated Sawira Beruti change rates. The portal also provides a summary of the product offerings under life insurance, which includes the 6-pack, Skull Pack, and SIP policies. You can get a quote on the different policy types and apply online. Visit nyaradzo.co.zw and enjoy autonomy in your interaction with Nyaradzo.
The baggage, and as you're talking, Bruce, I'm saying to myself, are the people that rise to those positions and endure this kind of experience given some training, psychological training, some therapy in your experience?
No, I don't think so, you know, because I must say, you know, for ZBC, they stood by me because they asked me whether I wanted to take this through the court process. And I did initially say I wanted to take it through the court process. But this whole thing just became like a terrible movie script, Trevor, because when we were getting towards the court days, this guy called me in the middle of the night at my home. And he said to me, I want us to talk. If you let this thing go, I will let you go.
Wow.
If you carry on with this, we don't know where it will end.
No.
So this was 3 a.m. in the morning. I had 2 children sleeping there, you know. And I really reflected about it. And, you know, when my husband said to me, no, you need to go through this, I said to him, this might sound crazy to you, but I heard sincerity in that voice.
This man means it.
I think he meant it. And I dropped the case, and I've never seen this guy again.
Wow.
Yeah. And I thank God for that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's the downside.
That's the downside.
Upside?
The upside is you get to meet so many interesting people, you know, in terms of the people, your audience. You get to develop a wonderful relationship with the people who listen to you on radio. You begin to know them, you know, you begin to get to know them at a personal level, quite a lot of them. It was always fun, you know, meeting people who can relate to you either through radio or television. And then there was also the other aspect, Trevor, that obviously in some of the roles that I played in broadcasting and so on, I also got to meet a lot of interesting people. So that was a big plus. Yeah, people whom I would have never dreamt I could meet. You know, I met the late Princess Diana, did something there, and then, you know, I was also a director of ceremonies. She did, when she came to Zimbabwe for a charity visit, she had a very big fundraising charity dinner, and I was given the opportunity to be the director of ceremonies there and interacted with her quite closely during that time. And then I also got to meet Bob Marley, who, you know, from a music perspective, he was very big during our time, you know. And, you know, very, very interesting character to meet. I met people like Jimmy Cliff. At that time, I liked that kind of music, so for me it was a big deal, you know, and also just meeting all sorts of people in different walks of life, you know, on the job.
What are the pressure of being a role model when that's not what you're wanting to do?
Again, you know, I want to thank my mom and my grandmother because of the way she raised us. Except for the negative rumors that didn't have any foundation, I tried to live a life, you know, that was value driven, you know. And I would like to think that through that, I perhaps have been able to be a role model to young people who've gone into broadcasting and who've gone into other careers. You know, and I'm able now also to interact with quite a few young people who've contacted me to say, you know, can we interact? Can you work with me through my career, give me guidance, and so on.
Talk to me more about that. So you do mentorship.
Yes.
Both young men
and young women, yes.
I'm supposing there's people that are watching out there and want to be mentored by you. What should they do? Do you have a formal process, or what do you do?
It's not a formal process as such, but you know, the ones who've contacted me, I've begun first of all trying to understand what their expectation is. Because sometimes you'll get somebody who calls you and says, can you mentor me? But they don't really know what they want, you know? And therefore you have to really sit down with them, get to know them better, get to understand them better, get to understand what they're looking for. And then you also being very honest with them in terms of what you can and cannot do. You know, even in terms of the amount of time that you can devote and so on. I would say it's not really formal, Trevor, to tell you the truth. But I have met some very interesting and you know, great young people through
What's
that.
the most rewarding part of mentoring people?
You know, watching somebody whom you started mentoring when they were just out of university, they got their first job, they didn't quite know what was expected them, you know, in their job, and you walk them through that, and then one day they become a managing director, and you think, wow.
I was part of that journey.
And you just watch them blossom and just become who they're meant to be, and it's fantastic.
Any disappointments with people that you've mentored? Do you have any that you felt, oh no?
Fortunately, no.
No, that's good.
Yeah,
That's
fortunately,
good. You know,
no.
I find, and I've said this before, that I find that the people that raise their hands and say they want to be mentored, even though they don't know what it is that they want, tend to do very well. It's those that you go chasing, I want to mentor you, that don't turn out well. Is that your experience?
No, that is my experience, because it's funny you should say that. I have offered where I've seen somebody, you know, kind of not going along the path that probably is beneficial for them, but they don't want to be mentored.
No, you feel they want to be mentored, but they don't. Busi, and then you left ZBC. You know, what a career, what a career. And then you joined Dairy Board, am I right?
I joined Delta.
Delta. What was Delta before Dairy Board? Talk to me about
division.
Delta beverage division.
Yes, I loved it. You know, I don't drink beer, Trevor, but I loved the brands.
Right.
You know, I just absolutely loved the brands. And it opened up, you know, a chapter of my life that I had to end up going to places that ordinarily I wouldn't have gone, but I could see people enjoying the brand, you know, and that was really fantastic. And Delta is a very structured company in the way in which they carry out their business.
So you're talking about Delta Beverages being structured and you being thrown right in there, experiencing these brands and seeing people enjoying the brands. What was the highlight of that part of your life?
I think it was just being part of this big corporate, a very respected corporate. And they taught me that you could go to work, achieve your goals, your objectives, the strategic objectives of the organization, but still have fun. You know, I was surrounded by young people of my age group at that time who were really dynamic in terms of sales and marketing, you know. And I think we just had so much fun at Delta. And because I was moving from broadcasting into public relations, it also was a fantastic training ground as well, you know. And I always reflect on Delta being a brand that's not in your face in terms of what they do in terms of public relations. Right. It's very subtle, you know. Even their investment in communities and so on, they don't shout about it. But everybody knows that Delta is a good corporate citizen. So that was the big takeaway for me, that you can actually do that, but be subtle about it.
And from Delta Beverages, did you then go to
Dairy Board? Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And in what capacity?
Still in public relations.
Right.
And at the time that they recruited me, Trevor, they were at a very interesting point in their journey. As a company, they had been a parastatal all along, and they were moving from being a parastatal to a listed company. And they needed to go through all the processes, motions, and so on that would transform them from being a parastatal to a listed corporate. So I was part of the team that worked on the campaign called More Than Just Milk. Yes. So it was really talking about the brand not just being about milk, but its impact in terms of the country's economy, its impact in terms of health, in terms of development of farmers and all of that. And it was a very exciting campaign. And we worked with some really great people there. Yeah.
And is that when you decided to do food science? MSc?
Yes.
Talk to me about that decision.
Yeah, it was a bit of a difficult decision. You know, I had an opportunity, Trevor, when I was at ZBC to go and study at Harvard. And for me, this was like a dream. Yeah, it was like a dream to go and study at Harvard. But the problem was that one of my children, my middle son, had a very bad condition, tonsillitis. You know, it was chronic, and I really felt that as a mother, I couldn't leave him at that stage with that condition. I mean, who would I have left him with? My mom, I know, was a very wonderful, loving person, but he needed a mother. You know, so I didn't, you know, go to Harvard. Something that I don't regret, because given the two choices, I still believe the choice I made was the correct one. But what it then meant is I was now focusing on the children and getting them to grow and develop into the wonderful young people they've developed into. But I also still wanted to study, you know. But my job at Dairy Board, I was director in charge of human resources, and at the same time, I held the PR portfolio as well. And I really felt that it would have been impossible for me to study, you know. And my boss at that stage agreed with me and said, you need to go away, and study something that you feel will be useful in terms of the role that you're playing here. And because I had been learning about the food industry on the job, I really felt that this was something that I wanted to do. So I got this opportunity to go to Ireland and study at the University of Cork. They are famous for the work that they do in the food industry. Yes, that's their forte. So it was a good place to be to study.
You came out with a food business major.
Yes, that's correct.
Are you still using that degree?
Well, you know, when you look at business degrees, it's the same things, isn't it, really? You're studying strategy, you're studying marketing, those kind of things. Yeah.
And so Delta Beverages, Dairy Board, and now Zimplats.
Yes.
You know, one thing that runs through, a thread that runs through, is that you're a long stayer. You do 10 years.
Correct.
You do 13 years. You do 14 years. Talk to me about that loyalty.
I've been very fortunate to work with brands that I believe in. Yeah. So it's been easy to be loyal because I think for all the organizations that I've worked for, they're good corporates, you know, and they do a good job in terms of the basic product, the brands that they offer, and the good that they do. Yeah, so it's been easy for me to stay and be loyal. Yeah.
And of the things that you do, I mean, corporate communications, talk to us about what are the do's and don'ts in corporate communication? I'll say that because, and tell me what your response to this is, and in your current job. My sense is that if I had my way, I would get quite a lot of these quoted company CEO, put them in a room and train them on how they interact with media, with journalists. Meantime, I would be talking to the journalists on that side. But I believe our corporate executives need to be taught how to interact with the media. What's your sense?
I think so. You know, maybe I've just been fortunate that I worked on the other side as well. I worked for a lot of my life with reporters and with the media. So what I have seen generally is that, yes, you do find corporate executives are perhaps suspicious of the media. You know, the sincerity. If you talk to me, is it hard talk?
And I told you this is not hard talk, eh?
You know, is it hard talk, or do you sincerely want to understand my brand and what it stands for?
What's your agenda?
Yeah, what's your agenda? So I think that is what I found, that you do need to be the go-between and demonstrate that, most media practitioners just really want the true story. Yeah.
And what are, as far as you're concerned, in your experience, what are the do's and don'ts that you would share with young people that are getting into the trade? Is it where corporate communications? What are the do's and don'ts?
I think you need to be a person of integrity. Yeah, I think integrity is key in that role, because whatever story you are sharing, the narrative that you're sharing has to be a true narrative. So I think that's the starting point, because I'm saying this, Trevor, because there's the spin doctor kind of label. Yes, there's the spin doctor label. But from my experience, it has really been an issue of be truthful, be honest, and be acceptance of criticism. Because sometimes what happens with reporters, with journalists is they may be critical of you, but you should have the backbone to be able to reflect on what they're criticizing you for, and say, is it fair criticism or is it not? And where it's not, you fix it. Yeah.
I like the thing about integrity, because it says, I as a journalist can trust you. If I come and say, I gather ABCD happened, I know you won't fob me. You're going to tell me the right reason. You're going to tell me it's the right time to communicate or it's not the right time to communicate. And I go away without wanting to go behind your back. Is that your sense?
Yeah, correct. That's really would be my advice, that don't go into the negative spin that is associated with that profession.
And tell me, in terms of which for you, which brand has given you the most satisfaction in building and working with?
Look, as I said, I've enjoyed interaction with all three brands, but I think the one that has given me the most satisfaction is probably Zimplats. I work with really great people, Trevor. I say this without hesitation. They're young. The average age in that company is 35. So they are young, they're dynamic, they're clever. You're just surrounded by all these young, brainy people, and they're hungry to deliver. Our values are respect, care, and deliver. And they know that issue of delivery is important, and they go for it, with a lot of passion and enthusiasm. And it's refreshing to be surrounded by people like that. But I also feel that it's a brand that truly cares in terms of how it interacts with the world out there. And it's also a brand that impacts you every single day. And for me, I just wonder whether people know that, we talk about platinum. We talk about it mainly in terms of revenue generation, and we talk about it in terms of maybe its contribution to the fiscus. But I think we should also take a step back as a country and look at the platinum group metals and say, why do we even mine them? What difference do they make in our lives?
Do we get it?
No, I don't think we get it. And perhaps, that I need to
we
fault
throw
myself.
the ball back
Yes,
at you,
yes,
Lucy.
yes. No, and I accept that, Trevor. That's one of the things that I've said we need maybe to really be more aggressive about, in terms of people appreciating that as a country, we make a difference in people's lives. Because it's a green metal. When you talk about climate change, you talk about carbon emissions and so on.
Do you take journalists, for instance, to educate them?
We do.
Civil
do.
society leaders
We
and
do.
so forth?
We do.
Can I go down the mine one of these days?
Yes, we've
please?
taken journalists down the mine and so on, and we take the opportunity, to talk about the business and the difference that platinum makes in people's lives and the platinum group metals make.
Interestingly, you say that because I think you do yourself a slight disservice, because Eddie Cross was sitting where you are sitting 2 weeks ago, and he was singing the praises, the Zimplats praises, and indeed quite a number of people are full of praise for what Zimplats is doing, not just on the fiscal side, but the type of management, corporate governance issues and so forth. So you guys are doing a fantastic job. Busi, let's go to something that is your passion, sports.
Yes. I love sport. Yes.
Where does the love of sport come from?
I think just from the family that I grew up in. Yeah. They're all very, very, very passionate about one sport or another. And then I married somebody who's also crazy about sports.
Which football team does he support?
Which football team do we
Arsenal.
support? Yes. So today I can say it, and I can say it with pride, because we've gone through a rocky part.
Absolutely, but we won a game on Sunday.
Oh yeah, and what a game. It was an important game to win, and we did it in style.
Right.
So yeah.
So it comes from the family.
Yes.
You play golf?
I play golf. That came from my husband, because he loves his golf. And we tried throughout our marriage to find space where we can be just the two of us, where we are parents, yes, but we also realized that we needed time where we just reflect and just, enjoy each other's company and golf for
7 kilometers walking, 4 hours.
Yes, you do a lot
As
of
a couple,
talking, you do a lot of laughing and so on. So it's
Who
time
is the best
that we
golfer,
enjoy.
you or him?
Well, it's funny you should say that. We play every Sunday and we bet, who's going to win and so on and so on. And I think right now it's balanced.
It's even.
Yeah.
You've been the vice president of the Zimbabwe Olympic Committee.
Correct.
And you made history by being appointed the first chef de mission for the Youth Olympics.
Yes.
We have showed up, but we've not brought the trophies from home. We've not brought the medals at home. For you, what has been the most fulfilling part of being involved with the Zimbabwe Olympic Committee?
I think it's still a journey, Trevor. And I think as a country, we perhaps have our own economic challenges, which then makes it very difficult for us from a financial point of view to invest in sport. I'll give you an example that if you look at a country like Botswana, for instance, Botswana made a decision, I think about 6-7 years ago, to really invest in sport. And when you watch sports, whether you're looking at the World Athletics or you're looking at the Olympic Games, Botswana's name keeps cropping up.
Surprisingly.
Yes. And for me, having been involved in sports for the length of time I have been, it's really a case of the administrators have to do their work, the people who develop the talent have to do their work, but there also has to be an element of investment in infrastructure, in exposing these young athletes so that you prepare them fully when they compete on the world stage.
And the Davis Cup, you've also been involved
Yes,
with the
yes,
Davis
yes.
Cup.
Yes, I love tennis, so I really enjoyed being involved in organizing the Davis Cup. And again, you know, if you love a sport and you are exposed to the biggest names in tennis over time, it's also something that's enjoyable. Yeah.
Busi, one thing that you are quite passionate about and you spend quite a lot of time is investing in people that are disabled, particularly people with albinism. I must tell you that jumped at me because when I grew up in Magwegwe, my next door friend, can't find a better word than that, was actually a
person
living with
albinism.
albinism. And I remember walking with him, you know, the insults that he would receive from people, you know, they'd call him Murungu, Kiwa, this and that. But he was my best buddy. He was my best friend. So we got into fights because I was trying, I made sure that I was
your friend.
absolutely defend my friend. Why have you been inspired to get involved in this area?
Trevor, one of the things that happens in my job is on a daily basis, you get letters or phone calls from people seeking help or assistance in one way or another. And I kept on getting letters and cries for help from people with albinism. And their main issue was to do with lotions so that they could cope with the impact of the sun on their skin and so on. Then, you know, I used to write about this in my board reports that we're doing this, we're doing that. And the board members then once said to me, can you not increase the impact that you're having on people with albinism? And our CEO was very, very supportive in this regard and gave me that space to be able to interact with people with albinism and say, what should we be doing to help you? So in that interaction, Trevor, I heard heart-rending stories, you know, of the nature that you talked about, the insults that they go through. But it's not even that. I started hearing stories about children who are born and have to stay indoors all their lives because the parents are lodgers and the owner of the house says, this child will spook everybody else, they can't go out, you know? So the only time the child leaves the house is to go to the toilet and back. And I couldn't, as a mother, even begin to imagine such a life. Then the other issue is that if you see people with albinism, they've got little brown spots. And those are the beginnings of skin cancer. And if that is not attended to, they have the most horrific wounds that you've ever seen. So for me, that really touched me. And we began by forming a group of different organizations who look after people with albinism, and we called it the Friends of Albinism. And under Friends of Albinism, we then started saying, what is it that we need to do to make an impact on the lives of people with albinism? And, you know, from the focus group discussions that we held, we actually found that it was about raising awareness, creating respect for them, you know, getting people to be aware of the challenges that they faced and getting people to accept them for who they are. So we then coined a phrase, beyond the skin. And the campaign that we then ran was under the name Beyond the Skin.
So you've cited a couple of challenges that they face. Are there another challenges? I mean, I related my story of him, my friend being insulted.
Yes.
And that kind of stuff. What other issues do they face?
Some of them face challenges of sexual abuse because there are people who believe that if you sleep with somebody with albinism, it'll have a positive impact on you. So we started hearing stories of girls who go through sexual abuse. And then again, as a woman, you know, one of the things that really affected me was a woman giving birth to a child with albinism and then being rejected by her husband, by her family, because this child has come into this world. And what is cruel is I understand that the albinism gene is actually passed on by males. So,
But
you
the
know,
woman takes the...
yes, takes the heat for it. Whereas a child is a child is a child, you know. And we're hoping that people can get to that point of acceptance. And I was totally delighted when I found ZBC now has a presenter who is a person with albinism, because one of the things that we push in that campaign is for corporates to take on people with albinism within their corporate structures.
Are we doing enough of that?
We're not.
We're not.
We're not. But
What's-
we
what's-
also
what's
try
your
to
message?
lead.
What's
We
your
also
message?
try to lead by
Yeah,
example,
true.
you know, by doing that. And my message is that people with albinism, you know, look beyond the skin. And you'll just have a person who's committed, who's loyal, who's passionate about their work, just like everybody else. Yeah.
Wow. Well, let's hope people are listening out there and realize that these are human beings just like us, citizens that need love and mentorship and support and visibility and
Yes.
opportunities. Busi, you have been successful quite a lot. You are an icon. I told you when I grew up, when I was growing up, I would sit there and say, "There is Busi," and it was the highlight of our weekend as young people. You, yes, role model and those kind of pressures. But right now, I'm asking you to be vulnerable and share with us. Have you ever failed? And if you have failed, what lessons has failure taught you?
Yes, I have failed. And, you know, it was a humbling experience for me. Because when you fail, sometimes you go through a period of denial where you want to blame everybody else but you. And then you introspect and you have to actually accept where you've made those errors. And it was also humbling because as my children were growing up, I always used to say to them, if you make a mistake, you know, don't go into a shell about it. You know, you've got a choice, stand up or stay down. If you stand up, learn the lesson and move on. So here I had now to start doing that myself, to say you've messed up.
Are you at liberty to share what that messing up was?
I was given an assignment which was very specific in terms of the deliverables, and I was not able to deliver, Trevor. Yeah, that's the honest truth. And whatever impediments were in the way, but bottom line, I did not deliver. Yeah.
But you learned something from
I
it.
learned something
That's the
from it.
beauty of
Yes,
failure
yes, I stood
sometimes.
up and I learned something.
What advice would you give to a 21-year-old Busi? I mean, 16-year-old, you're already, playing music and that kind of stuff. What advice would you give to yourself, the 21-year-old Busi Chindove?
As you said, at that time I was very shy. I lacked confidence. I would say, do things which build up your confidence. Yeah. I think that if I had been more confident than I was at that age, perhaps I could have achieved more. And I could have believed in the potential to achieve. Yeah. So I think to young people, the world is your oyster, and have a dream and go for it. And sometimes the bigger the dream, the more successful you are, because you push that limit. Yeah.
And the more challenges sometimes there are in that kind of situation. Busi, you've highlighted very tough choices you've made because you're a mother, because you're a wife. Talk to me about work-life balance now, because Busi Chindove is a sports administrator. You have a full-time job. You're a wife. You are a mother. You are a sister. You are an aunt. You've gone studying. You've had to let go Harvard because child is not well. Talk to me about how you find, and you play golf.
Yes. It's not always been easy, Trevor. If you've got 30 seconds for me to just
absolutely
talk to you about this. I have a daughter. I have 2 sons and a daughter. And once I was, chatting with my daughter, and I said to her, so when you grow up, do you want to be a working mum? What sort of work do you want to do? And she's a very confident person. So she looked at me and she said, no, I don't want to be a working mum. And I said to her, why not? And she was about 4 or 5 years old. And she said, because sometimes you look stressed and sometimes you look unhappy.
To her, that's the picture of a working mom.
Yes, that was the picture of the working mom. But it was a wake-up call for me. Yeah. It was a wake-up call to say you're not getting the balance right, or maybe you're not getting the priorities right. So I then reflected on that. And I think whatever balance or whatever prioritization I've managed to do now, I owe it to my daughter.
Fascinating, isn't it? This is unsolicited feedback, isn't it? Coming in from your child. Busi, we had Dr. Mati Nyazema sitting exactly where you're sitting. And Mati said something which has got a lot of people thinking, that it's very well that we invest in the girl child.
Yes.
But are we doing enough for the boy child? You've got a son and 2 daughters, or 2 daughters?
2 sons and a daughter.
Are we doing enough for the boy child? Because I think her thesis was, yes, we are empowering, building up the girl child, but we're not doing the same thing for the boy child. Then the boy child gets married to the girl child and stands in the way of the success of the girl child because he's not been properly socialized. What's your view on that?
I share those views. Right now, for the company that I work for, I'm the chairperson of the Gender Forum. And our role as a Gender Forum is integration, ensuring diversity, and so on. And you find that things that you take for granted as a woman that men should understand and be supportive of, I'm actually finding that we're having to educate each other and explain things for that level of support to be shown. Simple things like recruitment and why should you recruit women if they hold the same qualifications as a man for that job. So I would say I subscribe to...
So what do we need to do?
I think it's about education
and
awareness and making sure that if you want true gender integration, it has to involve both genders. You cannot just focus on women. You have to actually bring the men on board. It's like if you look at our gender forum, I insisted that half of that forum needs to be men. It cannot be a forum of women talking about women issues.
If you were to give us a marker of 10 as a society, how are we doing in terms of gender sensitivity?
Maybe a 6.
Maybe a 6. Okay, so
I think we have some work to do.
We have some work to do.
Yeah.
Right. So Busi, we love books on this show.
Yes, so I've seen.
The Trevor book club is one of the favorite parts of sections of this show. And what books have you read, Busi, that you'd want to share with the book-loving audience?
Okay. I think a lot of people have read Rick Warren's Purpose-Driven Life.
Yes.
I did too. And I think one of the things that Rick Warren writes about is that we should move away from setting goals in the traditional way in which you set goals. There's a different way to do it. And I agree. But then I came across this book called That Further Show.
That Further Show.
Yes.
By Sarah
Arnott, yes. And I found that Sarah has got a very interesting way of setting goals, where you set yourselves 3 themes and you make sure that your goals fall into those 3 themes. And then she gives you a menu of how you then go about setting those goals. And I found it to be a very useful book.
Turn your dreams into goals and make them a reality.
Yes.
Okay, so this is a practical way.
It's a very practical way. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Then this one I found very interesting as well. I found
Nabil Quresh.
yes, I didn't know very much about
Seeking
Islam.
Allah,
Yeah.
Seeking Allah and
Finding
Jesus.
Jesus, yes.
A devout Muslim encounters Christianity.
So I found it very, very interesting because he had a friend who was Christian. He was a Muslim. He was a Muslim. Yeah, and he had been brought up very much in the Islamic faith, and then he started trying to understand his friend, you know, and he started reading and researching into theology and biblical issues and the journey that Christ walked. And his thesis was that Christ did not exist in the manner in which we understand him as Christians. And as he walked that journey, and his null hypothesis just didn't work, he ended up actually finding Jesus.
Wow.
And changing his faith.
Wow. I'm going to
Much
read this
to
one. I'm going to read this one. This sounds
and
like
his
a great
parents
book.
were so upset, and that is one of the things that he said. You know, in the Bible we're told that if you follow Christ, sometimes you have to make some major sacrifices, and for him the major sacrifice was losing his family.
Wow. Awesome stuff. And the last one?
This one is creating shared value to get social license to operate in the extractive industry. This is very much work related, but I've found
By
it
Caesar Saints.
Yes, I found it very, very interesting because there's a shift in the discipline now, Trevor, where before we used to talk about corporate social responsibility, and there's a shift now to talking about shared value. And I found this very interesting in terms of understanding that shift. Yeah.
Wow. Thanks, Busi. Very, very powerful books. And I'm definitely going to be either you're not walking away with this one, or I'm going to get
leave it with
or I'm
you.
going
It's
to get a
fascinating.
copy of Seeking Allah and Finding Jesus, Nabil Quresh. Wow.
Very
Fascinating
interesting journey.
stuff.
Yeah.
You have had an interesting journey yourself, Busi, and we don't take for granted the fact that you've spent more than an hour and a half with us. So thank you so much. And I have no doubt, Busi, that your story is going to inspire quite a lot of young people there. You've shared so much. So thank you, Busi, and we wish you the very best with golf and Arsenal.
Yeah,
thank you
tough skin.
Absolutely. So, Busi, allow me to tend to our viewers who are in Zimbabwe, on the continent, and all over the diaspora who watch this show every Monday at 7 a.m. Central African time, and to invite you to press on this red button and subscribe. When you subscribe, you get an alert every time we have one of these quality conversations. We've also gone a step further and created a podcast for you. Scroll down below this video and click onto the link for your listening pleasure. Until next time, for another quality conversation, cheers to you all.